Did it. Thanks for jumping on the Superlife podcast with me. Um, it's kind of perfect how I had to cancel on you twice just to get this podcast because I was laid out for basically 2 weeks, man.
You made the
Um,
whole thing up, didn't you? You just didn't want to have me on. You're like, how can I get her off and
yeah,
have her believe me?
it's,
But
it,
what did you have? Do you know what you actually had?
I don't know. It was the most stubborn
Oh no.
kind of head, cold, throat, neck, like
Ugh,
head, like just congestion in my chest. Like it was,
not good.
and I'm usually used to my body kind of snapping back, and
Mhm.
I couldn't understand. I was on my knees without a doubt. Like,
Jeez. Well, I wonder what hit you. And I heard it. I don't even know you, and I heard it in your voice. I'm like, oh, he's
oh
really happening. Yeah.
oh man.
Oh,
But
no.
so anyway, we did it, and I am better.
That's
but
wonderful.
but
Yes.
this but it also speaks to exactly what we're going to talk about, at least one aspect of it, and that is if we don't have our health, um
Yeah.
it becomes the number one objective for all of us, right? to
Mhm.
to get us to where we can actually operate
No
uh
kidding. No
in
kidding.
this wild life. So for you, maybe let's start, because when people getting to know you here, maybe for the first time, your story is so wild and intense, and at the same time, I like before this podcast, I was listening to your songs, seeing your videos. I'm like, oh my god, like getting days, literally days to live. Um, how, like, you had so many hurdles. Maybe talk through the beginning and how you got diagnosed and that whole journey.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you for looking at all of my music and all the rest of it. The story, as I always say, is so long. It's so long that I have kind of learned how to
Yeah.
squash this thing into a
Yeah.
very small chunk. And there are so many stories within this massive story of, like you said, being told I had days to live. That happens so many different times that you
Mm.
do, which is kind of a good thing, build a little bit of a tolerance to hearing things that are so intense, that are very dangerous to believe, I feel. So, wow, I will not take it back to my childhood or my birth. That might be slightly too far back, but all of that to say that I had this incredibly healthy childhood and nothing was wrong with me. And I say this on purpose because pulmonary arterial hypertension, which I was diagnosed with, and pulmonary veno occlusive disease, two sort of rare, although not that rare, diseases happen to women who are in kind of in their 30s. And it's a one of those things that we don't know. And there a lot of the time, once you're diagnosed, it's too late, which in my case is what happened. Technically, it was too late because it took 5 years to figure out what I had. And this point that I bring up a lot when I communicate my story is that, like you said, I'm this performer. I'm scheduling a tour, I'm recording music, and I'm becoming progressively short of breath. I'm coughing up a storm. My lips are going blue. I'm just nothing's right. It feels like I have the flu. So the symptoms again of PAH resemble the symptoms of so many other illnesses, which is why it's very difficult to diagnose. I was on stage. We'll never forget this at Rockwood Music Hall. I don't know if you've been to New York. I don't know if you know the whole sort of music scene, but music industry people were there. It's like that one time you don't want to mess up, and I'm getting on stage and I'm pretending and I'm like, I can breathe, and I get up and in the middle of this high note, I'm playing piano, I'm going for that note. All of a sudden I cough. And I don't know if you've ever seen a performer cough on stage, but I had never seen this. And then it turns out I was that performer and I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. So I try to make a joke, it didn't work because it turned into a coughing fit on stage. And that was
Oh,
sort of the beginning of me realizing that this was something That was no joke. And this led to 5 years of being misdiagnosed by top doctors in the country. And, I was diagnosed with many things, as I say, autoimmune diseases, pulmonary embolism, rushed to the ER, and then I'd be released, and they're like, yeah, you don't have that, but we don't know what you have. So, worse and worse and worse until finally it was sort of an overnight thing. I put on about 10 pounds of liquid in my body, which is a very strange thing, overnight. And I was in heart failure and didn't know it, and ended up in the emergency room. And that was sort of the beginning. It led to that, for them to actually figure out what I had to be in heart failure. And your pulmonary pressures, I would imagine, since you do not have pulmonary hypertension, thank God, are under 25, which would be considered normal. Severe pulmonary, and I say PH, but it's pulmonary arterial hypertension, PAH, are, severe is about 60. And mine at that point, just for context, were at about 180. So I was like a dead person walking. And that was the first time. So when you mentioned, being given days to live, you can't treat pulmonary hypertension properly if you have pulmonary veno occlusive disease, which has a life expectancy of like 15 minutes, as I say, PVOD. So, and the drugs, for one, again, you can't take if you have the other. PH has a life expectancy of about 2 years. So not the greatest thing. And I'd already lived 5 years with both of these things, which was already miraculous. So that was the first time. And then, like I say, this is my recounting of my story. Went into what I think you will relate to because I've looked you up, um, with regard to food and mindset, and used, when given this horrible future, which is essentially that there was going to be no future and that there was nothing they could do with me, and, sent home on massive doses of oxygen, told to just kind of go home and really die because there was nothing, right? There's nothing. So at that point, I just sort of took matters into my own hands, and with my partner at the time, went into this just research mode of how can I heal? I know that it's impossible, how can I heal my arteries, my veins? There's got to be a way because our bodies are made to heal. They heal, So what can I do? How can I biohack, basically? And these 5 seemingly simple key principles were sort of what I lived by for years, and had to be so patient because you don't see results with natural things quickly. And you have to continue to believe in the fact that this will help you. And it really was my only choice. So I was food, which was a completely plant-based diet with nothing, as I say, no fat, no sugar, meaning no fruits in the beginning, nothing. Very simple, very boring, very basic. And this was through a lot of research. My mindset, which I know you're big on, which was brainwashing myself into believing I would get better, even though, it was impossible. Feeding my mind documentaries, books, people who'd overcome the odds. And it was exercise, which at that time was, going from my couch to the bathroom, because that's about as far as I could go. And every day sort of doing a little bit more down into the lobby was a big deal for me. A lobby of a building in New York City. And then it was family and friends, which was spending time with the people that mattered to me most, but not focused on my symptoms or being a sick kid, being my parents' sick kid, essentially, but on life and happiness and joy, and making sure we kept our focus on that. And finally, creative expression, which for me is music. And that was really, music has always been my therapy, as I say, and it's allowed me to live in a world where there was no pulmonary hypertension at all. There was no illness, nothing. So I could keep my mind in the right place. And over the course of time, years of continuing to believe in this, doctors continuing to say, you need to have a lung transplant or you're going to die, and we don't know if you'll even survive the surgery, which I didn't do, which is a whole other story. Years and years and years go by, and I start to get better, which is incredible. And I started to perform with Steve Martin, who is was my ex-oxygen tank, he became the real Steve Martin, and actually met the other Steve Martin, which is a whole other story. But, essentially doing what I could with what I had, vocal paralysis, everything started to kind of fall apart. And then the second wave, and the story's almost done, but the second wave of life ending, which was the most dramatic one of all, which was 7 years after my diagnosis in 2020. I was home on a treadmill walking, at the pace of a snail, and my heartbeat went up to 180 beats per minute. And after hours of not going to the hospital, because I was so scared to go to the hospital because I was so scared of a lung transplant, which I thought would be the next step, tried very hard not to go, and ultimately was, given the advice by everyone I talked to, every doctor, that if you do not go, you will die in your house. So I went into cardiac arrest in the hospital, thank God, because I would have been dead had that happened at home. And then was in a coma for 4 days. This was an induced coma. And then I was put on ECMO, life support, for 21 days. And then on August 5th, 2020, received the miracle of new lungs. And I mean, I'm making it like it's all this concise story, but it's just the whole thing is just absolutely incredible. It feels like a story of that happened to someone else. It's like a movie,
Yes, right.
And here I am. And that is, again, a very shortened version of what happened. But in order to allow for you to speak.
No, no, no. Well, the point is for you too, so I'm good. I mean,
Still
because it's
going. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because well, I mean, there's so much in there. Because on the one hand, I'm always uh, challenged with even under certain circumstances. Yeah, the doctors can tell you that this is likely to happen or whatever, and they say, and they the weight that their diagnoses and all of these things, that's heavy, right? The so on that face of it, the first time you're diagnosed, no one knows what the hell to do. You take it upon yourself to what can I do, which is also, again, the fatalistic nature of what they've told you. It's almost like, how did you then find that space? Because it's finding that space within you to overcome what this current world is showing you and people telling you. And at the same time, you have to find a place inside of you going, what can I do? So how was that, at least this first time, how was that shift, and how did you start to find that space that can transcend maybe what is currently being presented?
Ultimately, the will to live,
Yeah,
which I think we don't even know necessarily that we have until faced with something like that, where this natural
right.
instinct to how can I, you can't accept almost. I couldn't accept that reality. And it is a very dangerous thing, I think, to believe, you will die and you're believing it. You're listening to people who know, and they're telling you the facts. They're not trying to do anything other than to give you the facts and to based on their experience. So there's no malice in anything they're doing, but it can be very detrimental. So the switch is not only the will to live, but the continuous reminder. Because every day, as I say, and I talk about the movie The Secret, which I used to make fun of. I mean, I was like, oh, The Secret and all I watched The Secret when I wasn't well, and it became a little bit of my church. And for context, every single day I watched The Secret for about 3 months. And to answer your question, it's because every single day you go back when you're in a situation like that to, oh my God, I'm going to die. And then you have to go back to retrain your mind. And sure enough, back. Now, for me, it took that continuous repetition. It took things like a bell that my grandmother, of all things, gave me a bell. And it was my partner at the time who suggested, these thoughts that you're having are so dark and they're so awful. You can't, they're like sick, they're horrible. And the only way to cut them was to do something else. So I would take this bell. And he said, every time you have one of those thoughts, ring it. So, I mean, that thing was ringing, compulsively. I mean, then my
Right.
neighbors, it's like ring, ring all day, right? to break the thought. And then it was a little bit less and a little bit less. And, I was watching The Secret for 3 months straight, and then I just watched it once a week. And then, so it's mind training. You have to make yourself believe something other than what you're believing. And there was no choice to answer the question. I think my will to live again just kicked in, and it didn't allow for the option to be death. Now, it could have been. I'm also a huge believer in God, so I have a lot of faith. And I do believe that the combination of hard work and faith is, for me at least, magical, when it comes to things happening. But it really was miraculous. But you can't sit there and necessarily pray for things if you're not going to do the work. So for me, it was that. How can I pick a new future for myself that's better than the one being presented?
Yeah, and then I mean having that very, death stalking so closely, that's a, and I also like when you're describing this, there's a lot of situations where people get something intense diagnosed to them and they don't have that. And where is their will to live? Where is their ability to perspective shift? And I think, probably because of your faith first, and then, but the biggest thing that you're saying is you're doing the work, because that's part of this kind of body matrix life that we live, that we're a harbinger of we're holding that soul, and only upon those actions, and those actions based on, in this case, you wanting to live and figuring it out, that's a big chasm, and not everyone chooses that.
Mm.
Even in the face of, and listen, there's a million, because I was around when The Secret came out, and there's clearly a lot of intelligence within that, and but at the same time, there's also a world to which we don't understand. Like, we don't know God's plan all the time either, right? And so for you, because now, because of your advocacy and your foundation stuff, you're constantly you're showing up for people in such a massive way, and you have to see sometimes when you meet someone, you go, they don't want to live, like
Yes.
so for that, like that's a huge kind of chasm of some people you meet that are not, you can sense that they're not wanting to live, or that they've just taken this on and go, that's it. What how do you, especially since you've kind of survived that and worked that muscle, and when you're interacting with others, how do you kind of navigate that when you're working with other people, when you're trying to inspire and support other people, when you're seeing that, whether they're choosing it or not choosing? I'm just curious, because that's a that's a mysterious kind of void
Yeah.
that sometimes people choose and sometimes don't. So
Right.
what do you see there, and how do you think that could be improved in
Well, it's
people?
so interesting. I had like 55 answers for you as you're talking, because there's so many things in that.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to sound a little bit weird. The answer is I can only tell you what I think, because I don't know
Right.
where that comes from really, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, again, this is the sort of weirder part that's been very helpful to me, is almost doing the opposite of what people say. So people
Mm.
typically say, it's not your fault that this happened, don't blame, I went the completely other direction, because when you are ill, I think the number one thing that happens is you feel powerless, right?
Mm.
And so I told myself the opposite. I said that you created this, you. And I took the responsibility of having created my own illness, even though I didn't do it. It was, I got it maybe from a bird or it doesn't matter. I let that in. So, and I do believe in psychosomatic illness. Now, nothing I had was psychosomatic, but I do believe in the immune system. It responds to your life, to who you are, to how you feel, to if it was a bird, why didn't the guy I was living with at the time get the same thing, right? So I decided I was going to take full responsibility. This was happening to me to teach me a lesson. Unfortunately, a lot had to happen for me to understand the lesson, but I looked at the entire experience that way. And so for me, it was almost a little bit of a challenge in a I didn't see it as, oh no, that's it, it's over. Why me? Why did this happen? I never actually once thought of it that way. I also think that's a bit of a dangerous place to be. And I always saw it as, all right, how am I going to, and this is a lot of what I talk about creativity, but not in the form of, music or painting. It's the creativity of how am I going to get from this to that, from A to B, which is impossible, though I don't believe it is. Uh, there is a way. I just have to figure out what that way is. So that's how my mind works. And I do see what you're saying quite a bit in people. And recently, somebody that I talked to, and I remember recounting to my mother, I was like, I don't think, like, they don't have, there's a little bit of a giving up in this person that I can feel. And how can I reignite that? And the only way that I think that becomes reignited is going to sound so corny and so basic and so simple, but is with hope. And the reason that I put my whole life out and try to share good things, versus bad things, is because I basically am tried to create the person that I wanted to find at that time, which was somebody thriving with this illness and this disease. I wanted hope. And when you go online and you see death and progressive and, you know, you don't feel that. So you have to create your own hope. And that is what my mission became to save my own life. And then to ultimately be the one person, if there was only going to be one, hopefully there are more than one, but that people could think of when a doctor was telling them, yeah, there's nothing, you're going to die. They could think, well, wait a second, one person didn't. And so the answer, even though I don't really know the answer to what you're asking, I don't know what makes that difference. But I think if you can reignite hope in someone, there's that potential. The hope can lead them to having a little bit more of that will, because when you feel hopeless, you don't, there's the give up in there. And then you're like, well, it's not worth the work because it's too much work. I don't want to do it. And it's understandable when it's understandable. And when I was lying, especially on ECMO, on life support, and it was the most excruciating pain I've ever experienced. I can't believe it was happening, and I can't believe it was real. And I was intubated on adrenaline, so I was hallucinating at the same time, and I was choking for 12 hours straight. And I was strapped down, and I just had the lung transplant, and every part of my body, the pain combined with the hallucinations combined with the choking for 12 hours straight made me realize at that time I thought, yeah, I can see how people would just give up right now. I could absolutely see that. I get it. And that's the choice of that person. That makes sense if that's what they want. I get it completely. In my case, that's a whole other story. I had to lie to myself for 12 hours straight, but I understand all of it. I understand those that wouldn't want to put in that kind of work because it's so difficult and it's so painful and it's so exhausting. Some people don't have help. I had help. I had a partner at the time and have continuously that was there. So everybody's facing a different circumstance, and I really do understand all of them. And so, wow, that was a long answer to just tell you that I think the magic word is the simplest one, which is hope. And just that glimmer of hope, which leads them to, wait a second, there's a chance. And if there is one, maybe it's worth putting in the work, and maybe it's worth trying at least what she did, or maybe it's not over, or, so I think as far as I know, that would be my answer.
Well, I think hope is underappreciated. It's I'm more of that now more than ever. Just hearing that
Yeah.
because if you're able to kind of, I mean, I guess the thing that sticks out the most is the ownership And that's a big one for people to swallow. I mean, look around the world, from the smallest things to the biggest things. People don't like to take responsibility for call it everything in their life, right? And you could have easily come up with like a million reasons not to do that. Um, but you took this thing on in the sense that you said, I didn't consciously create this thing, but what I'm gathering is on some level, you said on some level in the mystery of it all, I chose this situation.
Or not so much chose, but I let it in. And I think that,
Got it.
there's a lot of power in that for me, because what it allowed me to think was, if I'm powerful enough to allow this in, then I'm powerful enough to heal it, right? I can use the same part of me that did that. Now, I didn't do that in any way consciously. And if I could go back and undo it, or if I could go back and have had nothing happen that was bad, I would take that in a heartbeat. Um, Fine, then I won't learn those lessons. But I think, what's happened as a result of it, I think where this relates is that I see life, of course, I see life so differently. It's like I woke up, I say, for the first time, and I'm going through my life awake compared to who I was before this happened. I mean, I was also a lot younger, but comparatively, I was asleep, right? I was going through it. I was doing in the music industry. I was trying to make it as a, but my motives, my intentions, my connection to life was so different and so much more superficial, right? Then this thing happens, perhaps subconsciously drawn in because I needed something. I needed to learn something, and again, there's no consciousness in this. I would never have chosen anything like this for my life, but it's on a very deep level. And the way that I think it relates to what you just said is the lessons we need to learn. And so I take responsibility because I realize I needed to learn something. Unfortunately, I had to learn it that way. It would have been much nicer to like stub my toe and be like, oh, I got it. But me, had to learn it that way. So if you can see it as coming into your life to teach you something versus, oh my God, why did this happen to me? This is so unfair. Then I think that's when you can take the responsibility for, I've led my life a certain way. Maybe that wasn't the most maybe that wasn't the way I was supposed to be living, clearly. Then this thing comes in, which your immune system, your psychology affects your everything affects your immune system. So perhaps my life created an immune system that let something in. Again, this is all made up, but this is sort of this internal way of thinking that, again, has been very helpful because I've been able to convince myself that I let this in. And therefore, like I said, I can use the same thing that let this in to get rid of it and to heal it,
Yeah, that's that alone is so impressive in terms of how strong, not to mention all the things that you physically had to go through, but the strength it took to choose that and going, this is in this. It gets me to think about, like, life is not a mistake. Like, there's really nothing we can intellectualize thinking things are a mistake or that life is just random or
right.
whatever. But then again, not using that term choice, but allowing it in to facilitate something. But then for you decide, going, okay, well, on some level, I allowed it in. So therefore, what's here for me to overcome and to reorient myself? Because it's like you did survive. And now, and I love the hope part of it, because now you literally are a beacon of hope, which was nearly impossible in the coming together of all of those things, and and even the doctors like throwing up their hands. And so you're literally the embodiment of hope living now, and you you took that on to then be that advocacy. And it, and I'm like, yeah, I wish it didn't happen to you either. It sounds beyond intense.
Crazy, but it led us to this. All of that just for this, right here,
Right.
just for you.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
things I have to go through to meet you. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
For this one interview.
It's just like,
Man, darn, if only.
oh my God. And I and who the audacity that I canceled
I
twice.
mean, what are you thinking?
Oh my
Wow,
God.
we did it. Yeah, exactly. No, it's insane. It's insane. I see it very much as a movie that has happened.
Hmm.
It's a lot of why I don't hold on to although sometimes have these traumatic moments, which one I guess would call traumatic moments where I'm like, I can't believe what happened, and I just tears flow. But ultimately, that's not where I live now either. It feels like a story that happened to someone else. Um, and as I say, I'm so grateful to be alive that trumps that, even though those moments happen, of course, but
But
typically,
that's also life. Like that's
I'll fix my hair.
that it's also life, because for whatever reason, this is what life is. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be perfect.
Mm,
We are all gonna be hit with something that we can't possibly imagine in the
mm.
future, and then the resolve that we choose or go through, it seems to be the experience that we signed up for in this life. And like you, I know for me, I haven't didn't choose that, um, but I haven't wanted to just exist. And there's nothing wrong. Like, you see a lot of humans in the world, they're choosing what they're choosing.
Right.
There's no judgment. Um, and at the same time, when I hear you chose something that is a warrior's path to overcome, to learn. I mean, think about the education you gave yourself in the confronting this monumental thing that you're sitting there going, no, I was training my mind. I was training my beliefs. I was training my perspective. I was cultivating, I was watering hope inside myself. I mean, if you took away all of the gnarly things that you went through, if you just took that away for a second and look back at what your soul was doing with your being. Wow, do you hear that?
Yep.
Wow, that's a big ass
Yeah.
helicopter that just big military
Yeah.
helicopter. What are you guys talking about? What are you
Exactly.
guys?
Heard you. Yeah. You said what about what?
He said what?
Um,
So that to me, if I just, like you said, let's take that movie aside from the second, right? That movie that you've watched, went through, and the space inside of you that you birthed, that to me is the most impressive. And yes, on top of it, you had to overcome this huge mountain of physical challenges, but you've carved a space inside of yourself that is nurtured in a way that very few people have.
well, thank you for saying all this. Jeez, I mean, I think one thing, like you said, nothing's random. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in coincidence and any of it. And it's sort of not directly an answer necessarily to what you're saying, but I think that everything has led me to the next thing, clearly,
Mm-hmm.
and has allowed me to get through the next thing. So after my transplant, I remember communicating with a friend who said, "Are you okay? Like, do you think you should maybe like talk to someone or take something, or are you?" And I said, "No, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't want to take her. You're a little bit blurry. I don't know if that's okay, but just so you know, you're blurry. Quick." Um,
I don't
so
know why.
what I realized was that, and I said, just came right out. I said, wait a second, think about this. I said, and this is not to say that people shouldn't be treated for whatever they need, not at all. But in my case, my mind, so I really do believe that in order to get through what I went through in the hospital this time around in 2020, which was the unlike anything I could ever really convey in terms of the physical, emotional pain, every type of pain you can imagine was going on at the same time. I don't know if I would have gotten through that had I not had 12 years of boot camp mental training with pulmonary hypertension, with PVOD, with, dealing with physical pain every day, with dealing with not being able to breathe, with dealing with my mind, dealing with my body. So it's almost like it set you up, you being me, to be able to withstand what happened in 2020. So if you see life this way, which is what you're sort of saying, I mean, you're saying so much in what you're saying, but that one thing leads to the next thing, and it's not random, and it's that it's not coincidental, and that I did have that training. And if I did anything to change my mind or to alter my state, or had I then, let's say I did anything with pH to be able to manage pH that wasn't coming from my own mind, then I might not have had built the muscle that I needed to get through this. So we're set up, and it's sort of set up in a way to build you, I believe, so that you can build to be able to get through what you need to get through to sort of reach the other side. And God willing, I'm on the other side, and all of that madness is gone forever. You know, of course, it lives over your shoulder, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily answer your question, but it just sort of, I
Yeah.
believe what you do clearly about how it just one thing leads to the next, and there's no such thing as random, and there's a lesson in each thing that's happening, and you have to sort of find that and make it to the other side, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and so now being on the other side, I mean, you were gifted lungs, and that's huge. And so I guess now, what is life like right now? Like what kind of limitations do you have? How is life now? I mean, I'm not laughing, but what kind of limitations do you have? I kind of edit myself even saying that, because we all have challenges, and you have challenges as a result of things, but like your mindset is, look at your resume, look what you're doing now. You're creating, you're inventing yourself, you're creating hope for other people, you're creating foundations for. So what's life like now for you, and how do you see your best expression of that moving forward?
I mean, it is so incredible that I don't have the words really to describe how it feels just to feel well. I'm
Mm.
so conscious of the fact that I feel well. I mean, not everyone's so conscious of this, but that alone is an incredible thing. Every night I go to bed, I'm like, wow, this is so comfortable, to just be a person out of pain and I can breathe. So I'm conscious of this. I am, it's Dr. Artahali, my surgeon, came in when I was well, I thought recovering, but I was basically on my deathbed. And he said something that stayed with me, of course, and has meant everything to me. He said, when you get out of here, now that's a big deal for your surgeon who hasn't yet operated on you. I don't think he'd operated. I can't remember if he had or not, but either way, I was in a terrible, terrible state. When you get out of here, will you do for organ donation what you've done for pulmonary hypertension, which ultimately is just bring awareness to the cause? And, I'm like lying half dead. And I'm like, yes, and I was so happy to hear this surgeon say when instead of if you get out of here, that stayed with me. So all of that to say that now being on this side, that has become a huge thing for me, is to honor that yes. And to, of course, bring awareness in a subtle fashion, because, I don't go around talking about organ donation, but I share my story in the hopes that that can inspire people. And really, the limitations are, I would say, so little compared to what I had in terms of limitations with pulmonary hypertension. So, it's things like you can't eat raw fish. You know what I mean? It's just almost like a joke, right? Or raw meat. That's okay. I think I
Yeah.
can live my life without raw fish or, star fruit. I think it's star fruit. I mean, oh no, what a life without star fruit. And there's a certain type of orange. So there's certain things you don't eat because of the medication you're on. Sun is a big one that I'm with an umbrella all the time because of the medication. Again, you don't want to be in the sun because of skin cancer, which is very can really happen. That's sort of something like 85% more likely to happen after a transplant just because of medicine you're on. So it's things like that. You think about your immune system's compromised, so you don't want to go into a massive crowd of coughing people, right? But again, it's like I feel so free. I have no oxygen. I can breathe. I basically, as I say, I ate kale for 12 years. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the fact that I can't eat raw meat, which I wouldn't eat anyway, it's just sort of unbelievable how not limited I feel, despite the things that come with transplant, of course. The biggest one being, which is why I have this little sign that I show behind me, which says, "What if everything goes right?" The biggest one, I think, is the mindset after, especially a double lung transplant, which is the fear, of course, of the future and life. And I don't place my focus there. I don't ever like to talk about statistics, so I won't start now. But you do have this little guy, or I do, over my shoulder, like, hoping that things will go right. Because there are things, of course, that can go wrong. And, I just live by the same theories, and I live in the same way that I don't do the work I did, and I've relaxed in terms of life a bit, but I'm still very conscious of what I eat and, sugar, which is a big one after a transplant. And you know, I'm conscious, but that's the little voice you live with, I think, after a transplant.
Well, it very much sounds like you're appreciative of the things that you can do, and
That's
that's
right.
that's your
I
focus,
am.
and
I absolutely am.
that's a universal thing that we all should. It's weird how humans will focus many entirely on all of the things that are wrong, and I mean, it just makes me crazy on so much of the social media and all of this stuff, and just like going, what are we doing? Why are we focused on all of that stuff as opposed to solutions and, to your point, hope and possibilities and uh you
Perspective.
know
It's perspective. Yeah.
perspective. Yeah,
It
it's everything. And so in terms of your how like your foundation and the things that you're active with, how does that look, and what are you seeing as a result of what you're doing on your foundation?
The goal really of the foundation is to fund projects that do the mission. And the mission is a threefold mission. One is at the core, bringing hope to people who need it most, and raising awareness for pulmonary arterial hypertension and for organ donation. So those are the three core missions. And my world is entertainment, music, and whatever comes with that. So, for example, one of the things we did that we'd like to do again is the Smile Tour, which is dedicated to kind of my mini soulmate who died at the age of 8 years old, Humeira Bodania. She died of pulmonary hypertension, and she's the reason I actually started my foundation. And so this tour was about going to hospitals and playing for kids who are sick and bringing that hope to them. And then that turned in when COVID came around, that turned into Super Brave Kids because we couldn't go into hospitals. So then it was interviews with these kids because, wow, talking to, you know, a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old or these kids that have been through so much, it's like, I thought it was going to be so depressing that I wasn't going to be able to handle it. It was the least depressing thing I've ever done. The smiles, the joy, the gratitude. It's like you're talking to a 95-year-old, right? The lessons. So I thought, oh my goodness, these people need to tell their stories. These little tiny people who know more than, you know, the majority of the people that we meet. And it's a terrible thing because I would say every kid that I was close to is no longer with us, and has died from PAH. Oh no, it's going to affect me. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does, but it is, it's insane. It's so insane and so depressing, that for me, it just fuels me to continue to do this, um, and to bring awareness ultimately, because with awareness, people can be treated as I could have been in my case sooner, which again creates a longer life expectancy. So that's one of the things is the Smile Tour, which we want to kind of go back out on this tour. Music is always in line with this. Everything that I do is connected to my mission now. It's like I can't, you know what I mean? There's no disconnection. I speak a lot about all of this, and there's a documentary right now that we're working on, again, with same mission, short film right now that we're working on, same mission, and all of this comes through the foundation. So it's ways to bring this awareness, but ways that are real to me, since creativity is my entire world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I love that because you've folded everything, your talents, your abilities, your inspiration, your overcoming all of your challenges, and you fold it into your integrated mission. And that's a powerful it's a powerful force, and you're already a force of nature, clearly having gone through everything and then being able to amplify that for others. It's I don't know. That's I think back of what we've been talking about this whole time, and being able to be here right now where you're at, to be able to shine a light on this and to help children and to help people and to find solutions for this is really powerful. I think anyone listening can think of anything challenging in their life, to also apply these same principles, that we are not a victim to life, and what can we do to overcome that. And I'm just so impressed. I mean, like, I can, researching you and all that other stuff, but to hear it from you, it's really powerful. It's made a huge impact on me just now. So
Thank you. Goodness, thank you. You're doing the same in your world from what I see. You really are. And looking into also your life, which I know I'm gonna flip the interview on you, but the fact that, so from what I know, that you were, is this superfoods hunter? Is what you
yeah,
would,
that was a big part of my life. Yeah, yeah.
which is huge because that's basically what I became, not without
Mm,
doing it in the way that you did, which
right.
is the proper way of doing this. And so you know the value of essentially plants and what
Yeah.
plants can do and what the natural world can do for people more than I do.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of insight, which has allowed me to understand my motivation, and that is, I mentioned this here and there, but I was born premature, and I was 3.5 pounds, uh, and really sketchy, and I almost died, and um, my imprint basically was like, this thing that we have, this body is very fragile. And so I've spent my life overcoming that quote unquote fear of that. Now I've since done a lot of healing to let go of the fear and allow for the motivation, but looking back and realizing my birth time when that chaos happened was the impetus of going, I don't want other people to suffer. I want people to celebrate life. And really, superfood hunting was similar to you, is this catalyst of alchemy between our world and helping us along the way to then, it's not for me, it wasn't, I fascinated by the superfoods and all of this stuff and the people and the countries, but really on top of it all was, I just want people to feel better and to not suffer so that they couldn't dream, and that's really the where it all came from.
Well, I think that's incredible. And that's that same sort of thing that it's very healing to the person who feels that they can make a difference in someone else's life.
Sure.
So selfishly, it's helped me so much to feel that, to
Yeah.
be able, we do things for ourselves ultimately, and it makes me feel good to watch someone go from hopeless to hopeful. It's like I don't think there's probably not a greater feeling that I can have. And which is exactly what you're saying, is that shift in the person, that you can create that shift. It's like, it's incredible, just the thought. And that was the whole Super Brave Kids thing too with these kids, is that like you'll sometimes talk to a kid and ask if you can interview them, right? And then they're like, they're not so sure. But when you then say, but wait a second, what you don't realize is how much your story is going to help somebody else. You don't realize that if you tell your story, you know how many kids and adults are going to watch that and think, wait a second, maybe they're all of a sudden you see this face go from to, okay, I'll do it. So it's
Yeah.
such a wonderful feeling for the person who's able to help somebody,
Yeah.
and I think so you have that same thing, which I think it's a wonderful thing, and I was looking you up, and of course, and you're saying the same thing now. It's it's just there's no greater feeling,
Yeah.
than that flip in a
It's the
person.
flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take the challenges and you have to go through it. You have to go
Mm.
through it and to flip that and to integrate it. And I'm just it's just wonderful to meet you, and I'm so glad. What is one thing that you would love to tell people that are just hearing about you for the first time?
Oh my goodness, what a question. What is one thing that I love to tell people about my hearing?
I mean, you said a
Yeah.
bunch already in terms
Thank
of
you.
like, what if everything was, I
Mm.
mean, I'm making up, but what if everything was right,
Yeah.
and
Well, there you
all of
have
those.
it. Big one.
Yeah, that's a big
That
one.
might be the one, because that is
That's
what
the one.
self right
Yeah.
now. So the most true is usually the one we're
Every
communicating with ourselves. You know what I
every
mean?
day, right? Every day,
I
all the
mean,
time.
all the time. And I look there and sometimes I don't see it. It's just like on the wall.
Yeah.
And then I force myself to think it, because it's so true that it goes through your mind, and your mind is constantly, I think, its natural states to go back. It's like, wait a
Yeah.
second. Oh no. And so again, it's mental training to keep the
Yeah.
focus on that. So yeah, thank you for answering that one, because I'm like, what I
Yeah.
tell people? Oh my God. There's
Well,
some
I think people just listening to this whole thing, there's so many takeaways that you can apply to any
mm,
level of challenge in your life by even your story and the things that you took on and the bravery of just going, okay, this is here, this is happening, so therefore I'm going to use everything in my power to take responsibility and get through it.
there's one thing that maybe it would be the thing, which is the what I say. I always say, have fun. Don't forget to have fun in a grocery store, which is sort of my way of saying to be where you are, to not forget that, like, it's like I say, whether we're, winning a Grammy or we're at the gas station, we're just as alive in both settings. So to enjoy the experience of life, because when you are on your deathbed, where I've been, and you look back, a lot of the regret is, oh no, it's not the things you did or the things you won or whatever, because those are going to be gone. It's how there you were and how much you enjoyed that time. It really is that. And if you don't, it's like the joke's on you, because no one else cares, right? Then you die, and then that was the end of that. So enjoy the experience of life, which again, it sounds so cheesy, but it's real. It's real.
It's real, and I love the example of like be present in your life, and as an example, you're in a grocery store, be present in it. Don't
Have a
just
good time. Look
have
at
a
where
good
you
time.
are.
Yeah,
I know.
exactly.
Oh, there's so much. It could go on for 20 minutes. I'll keep this thing going for four
Yeah,
hours. So
yeah.
coming up,
Well,
of course, too late.
again, I'm honored to finally got to meet you here. Hopefully, one day in person, and I'm grateful for all the work that you're doing, all the hope that you're paving in the world, and
Thank you, Darin.
I know that everyone that you're in contact with, I know is better now as a result of it, and myself included.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Please keep going. Keep going. No, really,
Keep,
thank you for having me on and for all of the wonderful things you've said. Um, Now I feel really great about myself. No, thank you,
you're
really.
welcome.
And for all the things you're doing. Oh my God, it's a whole other interview.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm still starting. I
Well,
feel,
yes, me too. Me
yeah.
too. We'll keep going.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you, Darren. Talk to you soon.